Hello and welcome. If you search Audio Engineer YouTube for a minute, you're going to find the most common asked question in this area, which is how to get a great sounding mix. And the answer to that question is a lot more simple than you think. You see, I've been mixing for over 15 years and I've encountered every type of musician that you can imagine, from the very green rookie levels where they're just starting their C scales to the pros who are touring around the country. But when you boil it down, guys like me on YouTube, or even the pros like Chris Algae, will say the same exact thing. You need key ingredients. And when you have great ingredients, you're gonna have a great mix. To explain what I'm about, allow me to show you a visual element. What I have here is my mix. We have our drums right here and our bass guitar, which is the foundation of any mix. You get these two right, you're golden. We have our guitars right here. Be sure you don't get these things too spicy, because as we all know, guitars with too much high end can ruin a mix. Next, finally, to sit on top of everything, we have our vocals. And some mixes will have some percussive elements to just give it that extra kick. You combine all these together with a little bit of EQ and compression in the mastering chain, and you have a complete mix. First off, to get started with our mix, we need to have our guitar players over here warm up their tube amps, because as we all know, a good tube amp needs to be warmed up in order to give us its full potential and tone. So let's warm up these guitar amps. While those guitar amps are going, we can get started with our drums. We have, oh, those tube amps are really cooking. Now, when you are working with drums, you can have one of two options. Either you can go the cheap and easy route and use samples, or you could do real drums. I always prefer the real things. These drums are fantastic. They are in perfect tune with each other, and the drummer is going to play the living crap out of these. It looks like our guitar amps need a little more work to tune in. Oh yeah, that's really cooking now. So now that we have our drums all set and ready to go, and we mic'd it, the recording sounds great, let's start putting it in our mix. The key to having any good drum recording is making sure the drums are in tune, your player knows exactly how to play the instrument, and you have a great room to record in. Now, you could basically record your bass, your guitars, and maybe your vocals in almost any situation. I can't tell you how many times I personally have recorded vocals in my parents' closet with a bunch of blankets, and it sounded great. But drums really do change room to room. So you need the drums to be absolutely perfect, which is what these drums are. Getting a great room with a great drum kit with a great drummer, you're gonna have a great time recording drums, and your raw tracks are going to sound incredible. Seems like our guitar tube amps are nicely warmed up, so let's get ready to record guitars. Oh yeah, that's very nicely warmed up. So now that the guitar player is ready to go, let's record the drums with a scratch track on bass. So let's start getting our drum kit sounding good. We have our kick drum right here. Oh yeah, that sounds very punchy and very fat. There's our kick in mic. Here's our kick out mic. Here's our top snare, and here is our bottom snare mic. Remember, always flip the phase on the bottom snare mic. Otherwise, you're gonna have phase cancellation issues. Now we're gonna go to the toms. Here is our left rack tom, which is a very bright but very fat tone at the same time. Here's our middle rack tom, and that's sounding great. Here is our final rack tom. And finally, here's our floor tom, which sounds really fat, really huge, and has a very, very nice decay in the room, especially when you combine it with the room mic. Now, before we record anything else, especially bass, we have to make sure that the drums are in time, they are corrected, they are edited, and we have a final drum performance that the drummer and the band are all happy with. So let's edit some drums. So we have a snare hit right here that needs to be corrected. Oh, he messed up a tom here. Let's comp in another tom take. Oh, he screwed up the fill on this verse. And oh my God, what was that at the very end? Let's see if we can get another take of that. Oh yeah, there we go. Our drum kit is edited. All right, now that we have our drum kit edited, the next thing we have to do is add the bass guitar, because bass and the drums are the foundations of a mix. You screw up these two things, your mix is done before it even begins. So we need to get the bass sitting well with the drums so we have a foundation to build our mix on. So right now we're gonna record our bass guitar. So what we need to do is make sure that the bass player is in sync with our drummer, which means the bass player, first off, is playing on time. The bass player has fresh strings on his instrument, and I can't believe I have to say this sometimes, but the bass needs to be in tune. So let's see how that sounds together. I think this bass and this drum kit sound great, but we can add a little more bass because I think there is opportunity to have a fill. There you go. Let the bass guitar, somewhere in the bridge maybe, have a solo. And remember, it's your job as a mix engineer to make sure that the drums and the bass are sitting well with one another. Because like I said, you screw this up, your mix is done before it even begins. There we go. Now that is some good drum and bass action right there. The next thing we're gonna do, and I think you all know what we're gonna do next, is add guitars. So we have our guitar room right here, and we are going to take our two guitar tracks panned left and right, and we are going to mic them in such a way that it sounds great for the song, not so much how good it sounds for the guitar player. That's the key, because a lot of guitar players out there, you think, oh my God, my sound, when it's not the sound of the song. You need to have your guitar tuned in accordance to what the song needs. So now we're over here getting our guitars all ready, and I like a little bit of gain in my guitar, but I don't like too much gain. So we need to make sure that the guitars have just the right amount of kick to them. So that means removing any unwanted pane frequencies. Now you don't want to eliminate every single pane frequency. See, here's a little bit of 4K right here that I'm keeping in because there's a little bit of tone that is in that range. And you definitely don't want to eliminate all of it, because otherwise your guitars are going to sound like muddy dog turds. Okay, now that our guitars are all set and ready to go, let's add them to our mix. Remember, you want a little bit of spice. This right here is about 2 to 3K. You want a little bit of that in your guitar tone, but you don't want all of the pane frequencies. So you gotta eliminate some, but not all. Oh yeah, there we go. Now that is a good sounding mix that we have so far. Let's adjust some levels. Let's add a little bit of compression from 20 Hertz to around 400 Hertz. Because again, we don't want that low end to come out through the guitars. We want the low end to have the bass guitar. And the minute we let 20 Hertz to 400 Hertz run wild on guitars, the more wah 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 wahs they're going to sound. So our mix is looking and sounding excellent, but it's missing a little something. Let's add a little bit of percussive elements, or maybe you have a keyboard player. Let's add a little bit of that. Oh yeah. There we go. Remember, always have fresh ears when listening to your mix. I think our instruments are done. Now, let's add some vocal. So we have our main vocal right here. And that's going to add our foundation to our vocal tracks. And depending on who you ask, some people will have their singers double their vocal, quad track their vocal. But for me, I like a simple approach where it's just one main vocal, and then we have our harmony vocals. And to me, there is nothing like a great lead vocal track with a couple of very good harmony tracks behind it, especially if you have a singer that knows exactly what he or she is doing behind a microphone. I once had a singer that recorded her main vocal track, but then also recorded 10 harmonizing vocal tracks, both harmonizing up and harmonizing down for the choruses. That session was brutal, but the end result was spectacular. I only worked with her on 2 songs, but those were probably the best 2 songs I ever tracked vocals for. So this mix is sounding pretty good so far, but there's one little tiny thing that's missing. We're missing a different kind of element, and that's what I'm going to call the Axl Rose effect. See, if you listen to Appetite for Destruction, you hear Axl Rose singing both high and very low subtly in the background. Sometimes, if the singer is singing very, very high, I like to have the singer do the entire lead vocal track part again, just lower in the mix and also lower in pitch. So this is what we're going to do with that. And then we're just adding the same lead vocal part, the same way that the singer sung it, just adding a little bit less of a high pitch, a little bit lower pitch. Remember, if the mix sounds good in your room on day of tracking, turn off your computer, walk away, come back the next day, and then listen with fresh ears. This mix is ready for mastering. Remember guys, with mastering, all you really need is a final bit of EQ and compression. Some mastering engineers like to add a little bit more on top of it, but in general, the thing that you're going for is to iron out any EQ and add a little bit of compression to glue everything together. And right now the mix can use a little bit more of some high-end boost, what we call air, and the mix can use a little tiny oomph in the low end. So let's add a little bit of EQ there. But be careful, because the minute you start EQing, there's a chance that you can overdo it. You don't want to overdo the EQ. As always with everything we're doing with this mix, you want fresh ears. It sounds great, but I feel like there could be just a tiny bit more mud taken out and just a little bit more air boosted in the upper, mids, and the high end. Again, once you make an EQ decision, step away for an hour and come back with fresh ears. Okay. This mix's EQ sounds amazing. Now, let's add our final compression. Now, I personally like to use a relatively slow attack with a very fast release, because that way it gets all the transients of the drums to cut through and also glue everything together at the same time. But you could do whatever you want, it's up to you. But for music genres like rock and metal where the drums have to be present in the mix, I feel like a slow attack, fast release does a mix very well. Once that's done, you put the mix through your final limiter. You step away for an hour, and then finally you come back with fresh ears again. And then you got yourselves a killer mix. Congratulations, guys. At this point, your mix is finished. It sounds great in your studio. It sounds great in your car. It sounds great on that crappy Bluetooth speaker you like to listen to for some reason. And most importantly, it sounds good on your phone because that's where most people listen to music today. The mix is done. It's finished. It's mastered. You're done. Don't come back to the session. Don't come back to the song. It's done. Once you feel like it's done, it's done. Walk away from it and export it. The last thing you need to do now is export it and send it to your clients. Never ever export MP3 because why would you ruin your great mix by exporting as MP3? Always export at either 44.1 wave or 48,000 wave. And I always record and mix and master at 24-bit, and you should as well. So, now that your mix is sent out, it's time to kick back, relax, and enjoy your work. Oh yeah. Yeah. That. I'm sorry. This mix is outstanding. Sounds great, it's punchy, has the right amount of kick to it, and it's something that you can be proud of. Happy mixing, everyone. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.